different below. Chimpanzees use the tools to obtain food, and they communicate with gesture, facial expression, and over 20 codes. The lack language of the kind used on human, however, in which signals are segmented to be recombined for infinite number of messages. In a simple communication system, not just for one goal, as the case may be, signifies something from the message. A sudden battle cry can serve as a warning of danger, but sudden body posture and alignment can signify submission. In this kind of communication system, the number of distinct call or gesture must be few enough without overloading the memory. Furthermore, if the memory may lose distinctive and become ambiguous. The best of these reasons, a complex communication system are developed in which the code will gesture become segments and user information to generate multiple meaning. This includes a number of basic elements. As instance, Hug and Asher have made an analysis of one code. It could be modified one way to signal danger from above, and another way to signal danger below. Further, paths of codes could be branded to suggest that a new code, meaning danger and foods, could be made from segments of one code indicating food here, and another meaning danger coming. According to Van, chimpanzees use soul to order food, and they communicate with gesture, facial expressions, and over 20 goals. The like language of the kind used by humans, however, in which a signal is segmented to be recommended for infinite number of messages. In a simple communication system, one gesture or one code, as the case may be, signifies something from a message. A sudden bird cry can serve as a warning of danger. A sudden bird posture in an animal can signify submission. In this kind of communication system, the number of distinct calls or gestures must be few enough to avoid overloading memory. Furthermore, if they become numerous, they may be numerous, distinct, and ambiguous. For both of these reasons, more complex communication systems are developed in which the calls or gesture become segmented used in combination to generate multiple meanings without including the number of basic elements. As instance, Hockett and Usher have made an analysis of unwarning calls. It could be modified in one way to signal danger from above and another way to signal danger below. Further, paths of calls could be branded. This suggests that a new calls, meaning danger and tools, could be made from segments from one code indicating food here, and another meaning danger coming. According to Ban, 名前がだるいわ。バンラクビック、ラクビック、ラビック、ラビックグド、ラビックグドール、ラビックグドール。めんどくさ。According to Van Lavigdor, chimpanzees use to open food and communicate with gesture, facial expressions, and over 20 codes. They lack language of the kind used by humans, however, if it is a segment to be combined in a simple communication system, ranges of one code, as the case may be, signifies something else from the message. A certain bad cry can serve as a warning of danger, or certain body posture in an animal can signify submission. In this kind of a communication system, the number of distinct codes or gestures must be few enough to avoid overloading the memories. Furthermore, if they become too numerous, they will lose their distinctiveness and become ambiguous. For both of these reasons, more complex communication systems A dialogue in which a call or gesture become segments and are used in combination that generate much meaning, without including the number of basic elements. As an instance, Hagen and Asher have made an analysis of running goals. It could be modified one way to signal danger from above, and another way to signal danger below. Further, part of codes could be branded. This suggests that new codes, meaning danger and food, could be made from segments. From one code indicate food here, and another meaning danger coming. According to Van Rock. 면독세. 라비그다. 라비그다. 샤는다와. According to Van Rabigoodar, chimpanzees use the tools of their food and they communicate with gesture, facial expressions, and over 20 codes. They lack language of kind used by humans. However, in which the signal are segmented to be recombined for infinite number of messages. In a simple communication system, one gesture for one code, as the case may be, signifies something in the form of the message. A certain butterfly can serve as a warning of danger, or a certain body posture in an animal can signify submission. In this kind of communication system, the number of distinct call or gesture must be few enough to avoid overloading the memory. Furthermore, if they become too numerous, they may be distinguished and become ambiguous. For both of these reasons, a complex communication system, a dialect in which the calls, the gesture, become segmented and are used in combinations that generate much more meaning, without include a number of basic elements. As an instance, Hackett and Escher have made an analysis of the running code. It could be modified one way to signal danger from above, and another way to signal danger below. Further, parts of codes could be blended. This suggests that new code, meaning danger and food, could be made from segments from one code indicating food here, and another meaning danger coming. According to Frank Rockwell, chimpanzees use tools to counting food, and they communicate with gesture, facial expression, and over 20 codes. The rock language of the kind used by humans, however, in which the signals are segmented to be recombined for an infinite number of messages. In a simple communication system, one gesture or one code, as the case may be, signifies something and from the message. Or something by throwing can serve as a warning of danger or sudden body posture in a norm can signify submission. In this kind of communication system, the number of distinct codes or gestures must be few enough, must be few enough so it can serve as a warning of danger or sudden body posture in an animal can signify submission. In this kind of communication system, the number of distinct codes or gestures must be few enough to avoid overloading the memories. Furthermore, if they become too numerous, they become ambiguous. For both of these reasons, more complex communication systems are developed in which the codes or gesture become segmented and are used in combinations that generate multiple meanings that include a number of basic elements. As an instance, Market and Azure have made an analysis of running codes. It could be modified one way to signal danger from above and another way to signal danger below. Further, parts of codes could be blended. It suggests that new code, meaning danger and food, could be made from segments from one code and get through here, and another meaning danger coming. According to Van Long, chimpanzees use tools to obtain food, and they communicate with gesture, facial expressions, and over 20 codes. They lack value used by humans, however, if it's a signal are segmented to be recombined for infinite number of messages. In a simple communication system, one gesture or one call, as the case may be, signifies something, some, one gesture or one call, as the case may be, signifies something and forms a message. A sudden barker can serve as a warning of danger, or sudden body posture in an animal can signify submission. In this kind of communication system, the number of single calls or gestures must be few enough to avoid overloading the memories. Furthermore, if they may become the gesture must be few enough to avoid overloading memories. Furthermore, if they must be few enough to avoid overloading the memories. Furthermore, if they become too numerous, they may lose the distinctness and become ambiguous. Furthermore, if they become too numerous, they may lose their distinctiveness and become ambiguous. For both of these reasons, more complex communication systems are developed in which the code or gesture becomes segmented and used in combination and generate multiple meanings without increasing the number of basic elements. As an instance, Hawkeye and Asher have made an analysis of uh, danger above and another way to signal danger below. Further, parts of codes could be blended. This suggests that a new code, meaning danger and foods, could be made from segments from one code indicating food here, and another meaning danger coming. For years afterwards, the child remained largely helpless and utterly dependent on its parents for survival. During this time, it can hardly do anything for itself at all, except for one thing: it can learn language. The acquisition of language is arguably the most essential and wonderful feat we compassion in our entire life, and we do it at an age when we can hardly do anything else. Moreover, it is the one thing that children do better than adults. Any physical normal child will learn perfectly the language randomly, whereas hardly any adults can perform the same feat. How do children do this? How do they acquire the first language? Until so many years ago, many people were inclined to try to explain language acquisition in terms of imitation and reinforcement. In this view, the child simply tried to imitate what the grown-ups are saying. If it produces a good imitation, it perhaps gets rewarded with praise and smiles. If it produces a poor imitation, it gets discouraged by frowns or corrections. Consequently, the imitation of adult speech becomes steadily better, until there finally is no difference from it, and the child has learned the language. One of the most profound achievements of language studies in recent years has been the demonstration that this imitation reinforcement model is totally and absolutely wrong. Not only do children not learn language in this way, they couldn't possibly learn in such a way. It is literally possible. We now know a great deal about the children actually do learn language, and it turns out the way they do it far more fascinating than simple body imitation hypothesis would suggest. Uh, kinda. For years afterwards, the child remained largely helpless or literally dependent on its parents for survival. During this time, it can hardly anything for itself or all, except for one thing: it can learn language. The acquisition of language is arguably the most astonishing and wonderful feat of accomplishment in our little life, and we do it at an age we can do anything else. Moreover, it is the one thing that children do better than adults. Any physical normal child will learn perfectly the language surrounding, whereas hardly any adults can perform the same feat. How do children do this? How do they acquire the first language? Until not so many years ago, many people were inclined to try to explain language acquisition in terms of imitation and reinforcement. In this view, the child simply tried to imitate what the grown-up was saying. If it produces a good imitation, it perhaps gets rewarded with praise and smiles. If it produces a poor imitation, it gets discouraged by frowns or corrections. Consequently, the imitation will address speech becomes still better, until they finally no different from it, and child has learned the language. One of the most profound achievements of language studies in recent years have been the demonstration that this imitation and reinforcement model is utterly and hopelessly wrong. Not only do children not learn language in this way, they couldn't possibly learn it in such a way. It would be literally impossible. We now know a good deal about how children actually do learn language, and it turns out that,そっか。ここ読めないっつってたんだったな。For years afterwards, the child remained largely helpless and utterly dependent on its parents for survival. During this time, it can hardly do anything for itself at all, except for one thing: it can learn language. The acquisition of language is arguably the most essential and wonderful feat of accomplishment in our entire life, and we do it at an age we can hardly do anything else. Moreover, it is the one thing that children do better than adults. Any physical normal child will learn perfectly the surroundings, whereas hardly any adults can perform the same feat. How do children do this? How do they acquire their first language? Until not such many years ago, many people were inclined to try to explain language acquisition in terms of imitation and reinforcement. In this view, the child simply tried to imitate the grown-up saying. If it is a good imitation, it perhaps rewarded with praise and smile. If it produces a poor imitation, it gets discouraged by frown or correction. Consequently, the imitation of adult speech becomes steadily better, until it is finally no different from it, and the child has learned the language. One of the most profound achievements of language studies in recent years have been the demonstrations that imitation and reinforcement model is utterly and hopelessly wrong. Not only do children not learn language in this way, they couldn't possibly learn it in such a way. It would be literally impossible. We now know a good deal about how children actually do learn language. It turns out that the way to do it is far more variation than simple model imitation hypothesis would suggest. Hmm. How children actually do learn language. It turns out that the way they do it. マジむずいんだが。We know a good deal about children actually do learn language. It turns out までしか聞こえないよ。It turns out なんかザットがね、聞こえない。ザットがなんかね、the way they do it, the way they do it, it turns out that the way they do it. We know a good deal about how children actually do learn language. It turns out that the way they do it, The way it turns out, turns out, turns out, it turns out the, the way they do it can't possibly run on in such a way. Literally impossible. We know we now know a good deal. But children actually do learn language. It turns out far more fascinating the simple-minded imitation hypothesis would suggest. いや、マジでもう無理だ。俺の聴力じゃ無理だ。いや、俺の聴力じゃ無理や。It couldn't be possible to learn in such a way. They were literally impossible. We now know a good deal about how children actually do learn language. It turns out that they far more fascinating than simple-minded imitation hypothesis would suggest. これはもういいや。読み手が悪いわ。そういうことにしよう。31か。Well, recently, however, there will become approach of euthanasia. It is understandable for a victim of a terrible disease to think of arranging on his own death. After all, when we continue life, we are only bringing greater suffering. What's the point in living? This logic has been tested recently in the federal court system, and the results indicate that the right to die rapidly becoming an issue that must be addressed directly with religious communities. For example, Washington State's law regarding doctor-assisted suicide was struck down. The reason being that prohibiting assisted suicide violates the constitutional rights to terminally ill, mentally competent patients who want to kill themselves with doctor's prescription. The intention of such a law has just suffered. Despite this defense, euthanasia is often understood to be an objectionable act intended to cause the death of patients. It seems to be euthanasia is a characteristic of a society that no longer has faith in the purpose or intention of God. More recently, however, there has been a completely opposite approach to control death, euthanasia. It is understandable for a victim of a fatal disease to think of bringing on his own death. After all, when continuing with life only brings with suffering, what's the point in living? This logic has been tested recently in the federal court system, and the results indicate that the right to die is rapidly becoming an issue must be addressed directly by religious communities. For example, a Washington state law banning doctor-assisted suicide was struck down. The reason being that prohibiting assisted suicide violates the constitutional right to terminally ill, mentally competent patients who want to kill themselves with a doctor's prescription. The intention of such a law has been justified as a way of getting rid of suffering. Despite this difference, euthanasia is often understood to be an objectionable act intended to cause the death of a patient. It seems to be euthanasia characteristic of society it no longer has faith in the purpose or intention of God. More recently, however, there has been a completely opposite approach to control death, euthanasia. It is understandable for a victim of a vital disease to think of bringing on his own death. After all, when we continue life will only bring great suffering, what the point of living? This logic has been tested recently in the federal court system, and the results indicate the right to die is rapidly becoming an issue that must be addressed directly by the religious community. For example, a Washington state law banning doctor-assisted suicide was struck down. The reason being is prohibiting assisted suicide violates the constitutional rights of terminally ill, mentally competent patients who want to kill themselves with a doctor's prescription. The intention of such a law has been justified as a way of getting rid of suffering. Despite this defense, euthanasia is often understood to be an objectionable act intended to cause the death of a patient. It seems to be that euthanasia is characteristic of a society that no longer has faith in the purpose or intention of God. More recently, however, there has been a complete opposite Opposite. More recently, however, there has been a completely opposite approach to control death. Euthanasia. It is understandable for a victim of fatal disease to think of bringing on his own death. After all, when continued life will only bring suffering, what's the point in living? This logic has been tested recently in federal court systems, and research indicates that the right to die is rapidly becoming an issue that must be addressed directly by religious communities. For example, in Washington state law in documentation of suicide is struck down. The reason we suicide constitutional right to the immediate air, mentally competent patient who want to kill themselves with a doctor prescription. The intention of such a law has been justified as a way to eliminate suffering. Despite this defense, euthanasia is often assumed to be an objectionable act intended to cause of death of patient. It seems to me that euthanasia is characteristic of society that no longer has faith in the purpose and the intention of God. More recently, however, there has been a completely opposite approach to control death: euthanasia. It is understandable for a victim of fatal disease to bring on his own death. After all, when continuing with a life linked with the suffering, what's the point in living? This logic has been tested recently in federal court systems, and the results indicate that the right to die is rapidly becoming an issue that must be addressed directly by religious communities. For example, Washington state law suicide struck down. The reason being that prohibiting assisted suicide violates the constitutional rights of terminally ill, mentally competent patients who want to kill themselves with a doctor's prescription. The intention of such a law has been justified as a way of getting rid of suffering. Despite this defense, euthanasia is often understood to be a reactionary act intended to cause the death of a patient. It seems to me that euthanasia is a characteristic of society that no longer has faith in the purpose and the intention of God. Uh, According to Van Langedor, chimpanzees use to obtain food and they communicate with gesture, facial expression, and over 20 calls. They lack language of the kind used by humans, however, and with the signal are segmented to read wide or infinite number of messages. In a simple communication system, one gesture or one call, as the case may be, signifies something from the message. A certain bird cry can serve as a warning of danger. A certain body posture in an animal can signify salvation. In this kind of warning danger, a certain body posture in an animal can signify mission. In this kind of location system, the number of distinct code or gesture must be few enough to avoid overloading the memory. Furthermore, if they come to numerous, they may lose their distinctness and become ambiguous. A both of these reasons, more complex communication systems are developed in which the codes or gesture become segmented and are used in combinations that generate multiple meanings that include a number of basic elements. As instance, Hackett and Asher have made analysis of the warning code. It could be modified one way to signal danger from above, and another way to signal danger below. Further, parts of codes could be blended. This suggests that a new code, being danger and food, could be made from segments from one code indicating food here, and another meaning danger coming. According to Van Langedorf, chimpanzees use food of their food and they communicate with gesture, facial expressions, and over 20 codes. They lack language of the kind used by humans, however, if it's a signal are segmented to be recombined for infinite number of messages. In simple communication system, one gesture or one call, as the case may be, signifies something on the file of the message. A certain bright light can serve as a warning of danger, or certain body posture in animal can signify submission. In this kind of communication system, the number of distinct codes or gestures must be few enough to avoid overwhelming the memory. Furthermore, if they be too numerous, they may lose their distinctness and become ambiguous. For both of these reasons, more complex communication systems are developed in which the codes or gesture become segmented and are used in combination to generate multiple meaning without including a number of basic elements. As an instance, Hawker and Azure have an analysis of warning code. It could be modified one way to signal danger from above, and another way to signal danger below. Further, parts of code could be branded. They suggest new code meaning danger and food could be made from segments from one code indicating the food here, and another meaning danger coming. According to Van Langlois, chimpanzees use tools to obtain food, and they communicate with gesture, facial expression, and over 20 codes. They lack language of the kind of used by humans, however, in which the signals are segmented to be recombined for infinite number of messages. In simple communication system, one gesture or one call, as the case may be, signifies something and the final message. A sounding bad cry can serve as a warning of danger, but certain body posture in an animal can signify submission. In this kind of communication system, the number of distinct calls or gestures must be few enough to avoid overwhelming the memory. Furthermore, if they become too numerous, they may lose their distinctness and become ambiguous. And both of these reasons, more complex communication systems are developed in which the call or gesture becomes segmented and used in combination that generate multiple meanings without increasing the number of basic elements. As an instance, Hockett and Usher have made an analysis of swanning code. It could be modified one way to signal danger from above and another way to signal danger below. Further, parts of code could be blended. They suggest some new code, meaning danger and food, could be made from segments. From one code indicating food here, and another meaning danger coming. Ah.